I kind of want to say ho ho ho, happy holidays. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I like that. I got
How's
my
everybody doing? We're gonna just give it a minute, let everyone kind of get logged in here. Looks like Joe threw in a little poll question, right?
Yep, everyone knows the deal. They went right to it. So
Yeah.
grad
Mostly
year.
2027,
Yep.
class of 2027, which anticipated. But as I also anticipated some, underclassmen too. This is great.
No seniors yet. They're all done.
I have a few seniors who are not done.
Yeah,
they
yeah, definitely not all done, but
Yeah, I was gonna say I have I met with a student and then later his mom today.
yeah,
He's still working on his MIT and his Harvard and his Stanford applications. I was like,
those
let's
applications are hard.
they
And
are. They are. And
long.
um so yeah, I was giving them feedback and whatnot. So I was like, let's try to wrap that up. But anyway, so yeah,
We
it
got
looks
one
like
freshman parent on here. Like that.
yeah, yeah. I love it. Starting early. Or like a maybe have a junior and a freshman. Who knows? Anyway, did you have any other polls? I don't want to.
Nope, that's the only one.
All
Just
right.
get and yeah, like we thought, majority parents and students, I guess, junior year, and then a few sophomore, one freshman. So good to go.
Yeah, great. And just some house cleaning. Before we even talk about who we are, but because I saw someone already asked a question, so I just want to answer this right away. This is being recorded, and recording will be sent out tomorrow. It'll be sent out tomorrow. So yeah, if you have to, as someone one of the parents asked, like they have to leave early, it is being recorded. I'll put in a link the page that you'll even be able to find the recording, but it you will receive an email tomorrow. So actually, let me just in case that person is still here.
Ooh, also while you're doing that, oh, you're gonna put a link in now? Okay. I was gonna
Yeah,
say I always like just seeing where everyone's from. It's fun,
yeah. Ask
We have
ask.
we have
Let
long days here at College J Pro, and it's nice to take a second just see where everyone's coming in from. So if you can do state, city and state,
yeah. Anything.
wherever.
Get it. Let us know where you're at. Get a kind of idea of the where everyone's. Okay.
So far the southeast. Oh, there's Massachusetts. Fort Worth, home of my favorite college in the country from the many schools I visited, TCU,
Yeah.
Horned Frogs.
Would you say that that is legit your favorite?
I did. So it's been like 8 years since I've been there. Um, but when I went there, I absolutely loved it for me personally, just because it had, you know,
That's all that
10,000
matters.
students. That's all that matters. But big school feel, big football, basketball, all that, but not like 40,000 students like a Penn State. And I'm from Arkansas, so I like the
Yeah.
Southwest and that feel. So to me, my favorite.
Yeah. And for the parents who are kind of listening to this, um, apply this lesson for your child in that I often have families when they go visit the college, and the parents are like, "Oh, I love this college campus," and the students like, "Eh," mm. Or vice versa. The student loved the campus, and the parents kind of like, and I'm like, "Look, it's the student who's going. They're the ones who are going to be there for 4 years. They need to be the ones who feel great there, feel comfortable there. They have to vibe with it." So I always say, parents, it's not so much what you like, it's what they like. But anyway, looks like golly, it looks like we have people
All
from
over.
all over
We got
representing.
Hoboken, New Jersey, home
Yeah,
of
and
Frank
Korea.
Sinatra.
We're international again.
Korea, yeah. Do you know
So
Hoboken is
great.
the birthplace of baseball too? Did you know that?
Is it?
Hoopers
Oh, I did know that. That slipped my mind,
Hooperstown
but as you
likes
say it,
to,
that does
yeah,
stricken.
Hooperstown likes to steal the thunder, but we're
But
Hoboken. I lived there for about 7 years. So whoever's on here, I was at 10th and Jefferson for a long time. So thanks for coming, Hoboken and Seoul, Korea. Yeah, like you said, it's fun.
yeah. Well, and I don't know if anybody's been to any of our past webinars or anything, but um, I lived in LA for 20, well, I should say 20, Southern California for 28 years. 24 of that was in LA proper, but the when I worked at USC, um, but now that I moved over to Kansas, I'm like, experiencing new schools or like being, it's it's fun seeing more and more schools so in person versus just hearing about them. But anyway, I'm going to start sharing the screen if that's all right with you, Joe.
Yeah, let's get started. And yeah, if you're on the East Coast like me, pull up a glass of wine. If you're in Seoul, Korea, I think it's morning time there, coffee or tea. Middle of the country, I don't know, afternoon tea. What do you do, JP, at
Well, I'm
5 or 6
Irish.
o'clock?
I'm Irish, so it's Irish whiskey for me.
Irish whiskey, okay, yeah, whatever. But we're gonna have fun tonight. And want to introduce ourselves now and get into it? Does that
Yeah.
work for you? Or
So just I think everyone knows why we're here tonight. We're talking about, kind of what we should all be working on at this time of year, especially class of 2027. But frankly, for those who said they're class of 28 and 29, this is going to be helpful. We got stuff for you too. We didn't leave you out. And if just in case anybody's not maybe been on a College A Pro webinar before, or maybe just isn't familiar with College A Pro, the mission statement is we're trying to end this student debt crisis, and it is a crisis. It's if you look at the numbers, it's staggering. But to help do our part is by empowering you, the family, to be smarter shoppers when it comes to college. And I want you to think of it like that. You're shopping for the colleges. And just a housekeeping thing. Like I said earlier, this is being recorded. If you have questions, I'm all for it. Just put them in the Q&A versus the chat. Admittedly, they'll get lost in the chat with all those if everyone started putting questions in the chat. So if you could just put them in the Q&A. If you have a very detailed, specific question that's like unique to you, honestly, we probably won't be able to address it in this, general format. But we are trying to give you very practical, bit insider advice that could be, I think, very applicable. So, Joe, you want to cover this page, and then we can go into introductions.
absolutely. And yeah, so what you're seeing now, just these are all types of questions that JP and I get asked every day, and our colleagues at College Aid Pro. We're full of experts both on the financial aid side and the admission side for college. So questions such as where do we find scholarships? Will we get financial aid? What's the difference between ED, EA, RD, rolling, ED2, priority, all that? Should I take the ACT or SAT? Are we looking at the right schools? So just a handful of questions and many, many more. It's, JP and I have been doing this, long enough where we've seen how it has changed over the past couple decades, and it's more confusing and more anxiety ridden than ever before. So we're here, we exist to try to cut through the noise, give you as much direct information as possible, and hopefully calm you down a bit to help you plan. And the dads in this picture are a little less stressed with their hand on their face.
Say, this is a picture of families who watch social media and get their advice from especially TikTok.
Yes, yes, especially TikTok. Yep. So we'll go to the next slide. And real quickly, so my background, again, I have been in the college admissions side, college counseling side my whole life. Right out of college, I went to graduate school at Seton Hall University in New Jersey for a master's in school counseling. And my first job actually was at St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City. So Christine, you may know that, right next to Hoboken. Was there for a few years, and then went into New York City and was the director of college counseling at a private school in Manhattan, all boys school. And then was at another company, similar College Aid Pro, doing college counseling with families across the world. And now with College Aid Pro, and yeah, I love working directly with families and really just focusing on building the list out, getting through the applications, the essays, and project management, and just making sure that everyone feels real confident along this journey. I'll let JP introduce himself.
No, that's great. I've been in the industry for almost 26 years now. Dang, I just did the math. Almost 26 years. I got into it when I started working at the financial aid office at University of Southern California, and became a director of financial aid there. Um, Worked alongside admissions, traveled all over the country with them, and spent 18 years as a whole working in higher education. I worked in the dean's office alongside provost's office. Was even adjunct faculty, all at USC. So I really kind of know the well, behind the curtain how everything works, and so that's been my experience. My joke is I'm not homeless. I am working on my Santa Claus look here. I took my son to see Santa the other week, and as he walked away, Santa said, "I'll see you in 10 years." So I took that as a compliment. So anyway, that is my background.
Love it. So navigating the maze, and we'll try to go quickly through these slides. If you've been on past ones, you may have seen this before. We want to get really into some good information on what you can do now, but applying to college very much is, a maze. There are thousands of colleges in the US alone, so how do we get from, all of those choices, which can be overwhelming, and figuring out what are the right fits academically, personally for the student, where they will be there for, at least 4 years, sometimes more. And it's not just about the major, but about the friendships they make, about the food they eat there, about what they do off of campus, all that. And then obviously the financial fit with, colleges over $100,000 a year at some schools, and that, doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. How your your child can get to the college, be happy there, and you can all afford it and sleep at night. So kind of figuring out those schools, getting to a final list of 8 to 12 colleges that you're applying to, and then, the right strategy to get into the majority and really give you guys options, to figure out that best school that your child will attend. So college admission trends coming into this admission cycles, and I'll go a lot quicker than in past ones in this, give you kind of high level. Applications have increased year over year. Last year coming into this, we saw a 6% rise in the number of students applying via the Common App. For those new here, the Common App is one online central portal, really, where students apply to college. It makes it very easy. You do one main application and then you add the other colleges to it, and allows you to apply to up to 20, schools, at once if you want. And it's just a lot easier for students to apply to a lot more. And a lot of schools are, offer free applications or fee waivers. There's a new, I guess, system within the Common App now that if a student starts to put in their academic information, will actually pop up some schools that they call direct admits, which generally are less selective schools, and they want to attract more applications. But basically, it'll say you can just add us to your Common App. You're gonna get in, apply, free application. You're not bounded to it by any means, but that's new this year. And again, we'll just continue to increase applications. But what this has done, and what's the most important here, is that more students applying can make it more challenging to get in. And those schools that maybe you thought would be a safety for your son or daughter is now a target, or a target's now a reach. And there's no signs of that slowing down. So something to be aware of as you're building that list. Selective majors, this is really important. And, JP talks about this a lot. I think it's awesome, like, information here. When you're first just like Googling so-and-so school acceptance rate, you may get, let's do like University of Illinois acceptance rate. I don't know off the top of my head what to call it, 45%, if you Google it. However, what's the difference between Illinois in-state acceptance rate versus out-of-state? It's going to be much higher in-state versus out-of-state. It's much more competitive to get in there out-of-state. But then digging even deeper into that, what about the majors at that school? Applying to and getting into a computer science program at University of Illinois is extremely competitive. Maybe single digit 10% admit rate just to get into computer science there. UCLA computer science last year admitted fewer than 3% of its applicants. UT Austin's business school admitted fewer than 10%. So getting into UCLA computer science, 3% is more selective and harder than to get into a Harvard. So it's not just looking at the school, but looking at where you live, state school, out of state, private, and then the major, and really digging deep into that to see where it will be on your list for you. Early applications. All right. So real quick, high level early decision. If you apply there, that means that you're basically signing something that says if you get in, you will come to this college and withdraw your other applications. Early action just speeds up the process. You can apply to multiple schools early action and you find out sooner. And then regular decision, those deadlines are a little bit later in the year, January 1st or so, February, as opposed to the early applications, which are usually around November 1st. Maybe JP has a different opinion here. I'll be very transparent. Early decision, really exists just to help the colleges with yield protection. Absolutely. Does it help students get in? Yes. And I'm going to drop in a minute a link that I love that every year another company puts together the admit rates for early decision versus regular decision, and you'll see that the acceptance rate is much higher for early decision. So it can give students that may be in the border an advantage of getting it. So if money is no issue and there's a school that this is where I want to go, early decision can be helpful. It can help you get into that dream school of yours. However, with ED and committing to it, they often kind of have you with whatever they're offering up front for money, and can be tougher to get more money, and you could be in a bad position financially with that. And I think just philosophically, it's really hard to get me to get behind having a 17-year-old decide where they want to go for the next 4 years, such a big decision in September, October of their senior year. We see a lot of colleges leaning into early decision, and that's not going away either. I don't think more and more colleges are offering it. Tulane is a school that a lot of students apply to, a very selective school. It's basically impossible to get in if you apply regular decision. Vanderbilt admitted 61% of its class last year via early decision. Northeastern is, beginning every year to increase how many students they admit, or bring into their class through ED. This thing is around 50% last year and growing. University of Michigan, for the first year ever, offered early decision this year. And, I think one reason there is they're a little, worried about what with our current political climate, amount of international students that would be coming. So they wanted to, make sure that they could protect their yield a bit. And those students that were thinking, should I apply to Penn or, Cornell or, Michigan? All right, let me do the sure thing for me. I'll ED to Michigan. And the numbers are coming out, and we can get into that later, but it can help you. And if you're thinking about it as a parent of a junior now, just make sure you're working either with us or someone to ensure that if you get in, paying for it will be okay. Let's move on. All right, test scores. Yeah, so in 2020 during COVID, obviously a lot of things changed, but when it comes to testing, colleges basically had to go test optional, meaning you didn't need to send in your SAT or ACT to apply to college because of schools literally could not offer the test. Last couple of years, more and more colleges are requiring them again. And here, I just, as a parent of a junior, sophomore, put a plan in place. Are you taking the SAT? Are you taking the ACT? Are you taking both? How many times are you taking it? I recommend 2 to 3 times, one test, see how you do, and go from there. If your scores are good, awesome, use them. If your child is someone that does pretty well in the classroom but just cannot test well, take it, try your best. If the scores aren't there or where they should be for the colleges you're looking at, you want to build a list that has a bunch of test optional schools where they don't have to send those scores. But a lot of schools are now looking, at them, with, great importance again, and it can help with getting in and getting merit money, scholarship money to the colleges. So you do want to put some time and investment into that. And then the personal narrative. So again, parents of juniors, this will be the main way that students on their applications share their voice, share their story, talk to the admission counselors through their personal statement, also known as the college essay. This is the one essay that will go to basically every school. It's only 650 words max, not super long, but again, it's a chance for them to, in a way, talk to admission counselors and get past just their grades, their test scores, their activities, but really connect with the human reader of this. Really just important that your child puts time into this, does brainstorming and, does a few rounds of edits and make sure that, it's an authentic essay that reads well, and, shares a little bit of their story. As a parent, do not write it for them. Admission counselors can tell if it's a 17-year-old boy or a 51-year-old, mother writing it. And underclassmen, who knows what the future holds? It's possible that more and more colleges will ask students to do videos instead of essays just because of AI. And more and more students relying on it to write their essays. But regardless, students who can articulate their story, clearly, across any medium, whether it's writing, an interview, or a video, they're going to have a major advantage, and you definitely want to put some energy into this. All right, real quick. So early stats for this year. So this cycle, total applicants are up 7%. So we said 6% last time. We got another increase. So it's going up. First gen applicants are up 10%. I think a part of that is the Common App does a lot of good work in trying to get low income and first gen students to apply to college, which is great. And we're seeing direct results in that. Fee waivers are up 6%, and the number of applications per student is up to 8.5, which again, a lot of our students will apply closer to 10, but still a pretty high number. And I talk about the direct admit feature. Parents right now, doesn't really matter, but you will, parents of juniors, you will see that on the Common App for your kids when they start that later on the spring or summer.
It's interesting that the average number of applications is increased 8.5, because I think last year was around, in the last few years, I think it was around 6 to 6.5. So, it might not seem like a big jump, but really, if you add 2 more schools for every applicant,
correct, yeah,
that's a big jump. And that leads to, again, to why there's this application inflation, which is making it more challenging. You're increasing the competition. So I find that interesting.
Am I right? Is it 1 million people that are on the Common App each year? Does that sound right? Or is it hundreds of thousands?
I don't think it's that many.
Hundreds of thousands?
More like that.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever it is, it's a lot more applications when you multiply it by that many people.
So now we're going to kind of shift, and then Joe's going to kind of share like some of his talking points, and then I will kind of share some of my talking points. But basically, guys, you're going to hear 2 experts converse and kind of. And so I'm just going to say, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat. And depending on what the question is, I'll either try to answer it live or I'll type the answer back. So anyway, go ahead, Joe. I love the Christmas colors.
Please. Ask questions. It'd be great to answer them, and put those in the Q&A. And so, holiday season, obviously here, we want to give you a list of, what you can do in the coming, weeks and month that, into January, to best prepare regardless of what year your student's in. This will be a lot shorter than my 9-year-old daughter's Christmas list, who I swear is trying to bankrupt me. But trying my best here. Ninth grade parents, and I think, JP, I think you'd agree, like none of applying to college will matter if your child isn't doing their best in high school. And ninth grade, they're now pretty much a semester in. They want to continue building off of hopefully doing well the first semester, good study habits, staying organized or becoming organized, and all the skills that happen with that. And as parents, encouraging them as they're looking for towards their 10th grade classes to challenge themselves, but balance. They don't need to overload sophomore year with every single AP that the school offers. But if they do really well and they take some honors now as a freshman, maybe they take an AP class next year or two. And you want to monitor those grades each quarter as they come in, just to spot trend. Is math really, really good? English not so good? What's going on there? But again, try not to obviously pressure them too much, but the classes will matter. I think sophomore, junior classes and the grades matter a little bit more, but obviously don't want to have a freshman year that is full of C's and D's there. When it comes to interest, and you'll hear a lot of consulting companies say you need to start building a company right now as a freshman, and that's going to get you into
No, you got to cure cancer.
Cure cancer, yes. Do that. Now as a freshman, you're not getting into schools, and it's just not true for the vast majority of students. I think as a freshman, let them try different things. Let them try a different club, try out for a sport, arts, volunteering. We want to sample, not specialize right now. I think obviously we're in a society now where my 6-year-old has friends that are doing one sport all year around, and I think it's too young. You want them to see what else is out there and see what really clicks, and that over time will be much more important to them. And establishing the middle there a healthy family communication, I think, is super important. Really don't want you personally, I know JP you disagree, but talking about college at all. If you're on a spring break vacation, and there's a school down the road that you want to just check out for fun, go walk it, but it should not be, is this a school you see yourself at? Let's look at the majors or anything like that. Just, talk to them, no lists. Maybe you see a school, one or two here or there, if it happens, but, shouldn't be something that's a big point of all of your conversations. And we want to normalize just effort in school and in activities, and friendships, not perfection, and not with all just being an end goal of getting into a good college.
I just want to piggyback. I love everything you said, especially college is not the end goal. I try to stress that so much with my when I mentor kids, but and to the parents. But the one of the things I always like to say, like to the parents, if you're the type, if you're the family that sits down at the dinner table at night and you say to your kid, like, hey, what did you learn today? Or what did you do in school today? That kind of stuff. Change that question. Start asking them, what questions did you ask today? What you're trying to do is shift from them being a passive learner to now being an active learner. And so trying to instill that, it's a subtle way of trying to instill the curiosity. Change a little bit of that, the way you approach it, and encourage them to start thinking, and start asking questions. Make that normal, But anyway, I love this. This is great. All right, I'm going to move on for you.
Yeah, we'll move on, and then all right. So again, majority of 11th grade parents, I think, right now. Yeah, 10th and 11th grade classes, and I hate saying this to kids, putting pressure when they're in it, but yeah, they're going to be the most important because there are 2 of the full years that are closest to when that student is applying to college. Senior year, the colleges will see what classes they're taking, but for the most part, won't see grades. There are exceptions, of course, but for most part, it's going to be all right. How well did you do sophomore year, junior year? What classes did you take? What was your rigor? And what are you taking senior year?
Can I interrupt real quick on that?
Please,
I want to piggyback on that. The classic mistake, and tell me if you see this too, but a classic mistake I see when a family comes to me, like after they're, now in their junior year, and they've already signed up for all their classes, and I look at their class schedule, and what I see is that they basically waited for their senior year to put in like all their APs. So like maybe they had 1 or 2 APs by the time they finished their junior year, and then they got like they stack like 5 in their senior year. I'm like, it's too late.
Mhm.
You know, you need to do all those APs by the junior year,
Yeah.
because
You're not fooling the admission counselors where, because also they also know you can apply in September of 6 APs and by October drop.
right.
Um, yeah.
And they certainly won't have test scores. So that's, strategically speaking, you want to have those, you be prepared to take a lot of APs in the junior year. And if your school allows you to do it in the sophomore year, start then.
Yeah. Yeah. If your school allows sophomore year as AP, yeah, I think AP World History is like a big one. Take that for sophomore year, sometimes freshman year, depending on the school. Take it if you can, see how it goes, and then build up. Maybe 2, maybe 3 junior year, and then 3, maybe 4 senior year if you're progressing and doing well. And it's a big if there because I don't preach just throwing on as many APs and then you senior has a nervous breakdown, trying to get through all the classes. That's not going to help anybody. So maintaining a good rigor in their classes as long as they can keep up with the grades there. um Testing, these are the 2 years really for the most part. PSATs, pre-ACTs will start sophomore year. I don't want your kids preparing for it like you know um test prepping for these for the sophomore year one, because it is a good benchmark of just where they're at, and how they can improve from there for the real thing. 11th grade SAT, if your school offers it, or PSAT, sorry, if your school offers that, almost always October in of junior year, the PSAT is offered. That if your child is a really strong test taker and scored highly on the sophomore PSAT, you can prepare for this because if you score a certain score, and it all depends on your state, but high enough score, you could actually get scholarship money and other things, and help with admissions in college. And you can search like what those scores are per states. The National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. That's what it is. You can look at that and see like where if your kid has a chance. Then it could behoove you to have your kid prep for that. But the real one, the ones that really matter will be the SAT or ACT. Usually you're taking that in your junior year. And again, as we mentioned earlier, more and more colleges are putting more and more emphasis on it. It can help with getting in, it can help get scholarships. So it does, make sense to put some investment in there. The last two things I'll talk about really, we'll pass on to the next slide. Um, I think it's important to have financial conversations with your kids, especially as they get in the junior year. Of course, it's a family decision, a parent decision on this, and your comfort level. But they need to know if they don't, just how much college is. It's not like when we went, to school. It's this is big, big money. A lot of times, it's more than depending on where you live. It could be more than what a house costs. So they need to understand it. What that means, what loans mean, and then begin building a working college list, a list that's going to meet what they're looking for academically with a major, who they are socially. They want a small school, big school, urban, rural, rah rah, kind of more nerdy campus, and then financial fit, and building that list out. But yeah, let's go to the next slide and get a little bit more into it.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
because we're going to get into my slides, I would like to get your opinion on a question that came through. I have my opinion, but I'd like to hear your opinion too.
Mm,
Someone asked, do IB classes weigh as much as AP classes?
mm. Yeah. So I mean, I think it all depends one on how well you do in it. AP right now is a stranglehold on like potentially getting you credit in college, and it really depends on the school. Some schools will give you credit, others won't. So you do want to do that research one. But IB is often seen as the gold standard really across the world and curriculum. So I personally wouldn't say either weighs more. If you do IB and you do well in it, that's going to really help you. If you take a ton of APs and do really well in the classes and score 4s and 5s, that's going to help you also. But often you don't have a choice, right? Like it's your school either is an IB school or not. But I guess if you're someone that has a choice of attending different schools, it's a good question. But they're two very different curriculums. And both are good as long as you do well in them. But what do you think, JP?
Uh, Similarly, I will say when I've ever heard the like official response from colleges, they'll say that they basically respect both equally well, blah 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 blah. And like you said, it depends. If you if you do well with IB, compare that to then someone who also did well with the APs. Now, some of my friends who work in admissions, not all of them, but at a few schools, I have heard them say they personally view AP stronger than the IB and would show a little more preference over the APs. I've never heard someone say they give IB more preference. But if you ever, like I said, if you look for the official school response, they'll pretty much all say, "Oh, we treat them equally." Um, but like you said, if your school, it's rare that you're going to have the option to do either, one or the other. It's usually your
Yeah.
school is an AP school or your school's an IB school. Whatever your school offers, and this kind of ties into a different question I had where about dual enrollment. At the end of the day, what I always tell my kids is you just got to do what is available at your school that demonstrates rigor, and that's going to be different for everyone. And college admissions understands that. They know, you could be in the same town, but two different schools at two different towns in the same town might offer different forms of rigor. Just do what your school offers,
Mhm.
and that's who you're competing against is your other classmates in
Totally. Yeah.
essence.
Good idea to, as parents here, in the new year, shoot your child's guidance counselor an email, and um, ask for the school profile. Most schools have. You can also Google it. Sometimes it will pop up there. But the school profile is going to show you exactly what colleges will see when they're looking at your child's transcript and activities and letters recommendation and all that, because they are looking, and their job is to compare and really read your child based on the school, and often compare to other applicants from that school, as opposed to comparing, your child to a child from another school in another city or another state. So if you have friends and family members in other states and they're talking or cities and they're talking about how much their school's doing for them, that's great. Congratulate them. Your focus should be on your child and their school.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna shift a slight bit here. I got
Oh,
embracing the holidays and being Santa Claus of college planning here.
fancy.
Um, I want to share kind of my version of what you should be doing. Very similar, a lot of overlap. Joe and I are in agreement on this. Um, so what I say is like freshman year, start building those GPA and study habits. If you one of the things I mentor, I guess, with my kids is again is that time management, looking at different ways of how to study. I also tell them explore. This is the time to branch out and explore. Try different things, get involved in different activities. Um, Something that I am really am pushing as of late is I ask my kids to create vision boards. Now I'll ask them to do this all 4 years of high school. Actually, there's that. What I think everyone's familiar with is that aspirational vision board, looking forward, set your goals. But I also ask them to do a reflective vision board. Um, what happened last week? What happened last month? What happened last year? Something that was meaningful to you. Why was it meaningful? I basically start encouraging a lot of reflection. Start that habit in the freshman year because when they're writing their essays for colleges want to read about this, reflective journey of how they've grown over those 4 years. And so I start them getting that habit with vision boards. To me, I find that to be a very effective tool. Because I do financial aid, I talk about money. So parents, first thing I'm going to tell you should be doing freshman year, establish what is an affordable college budget, and then do a practice run with your, at that time, what's your income and assets look like, and determine what your SAI, student aid index, might look like. and then start evaluating cost cutting strategies. Now, this webinar isn't going to be a financial aid strategy session. We do those. We've done those in the past. We do them in the future. But all I'll say is the thing you have to remember, financial aid, or the SAI, specifically student aid index, is going to be based upon income and assets. Parents' income, students' income, parents' assets, student assets, right? And if you're not sure where to begin or even how to start like figuring out your budget and all that stuff, we got a tool for that. It's a free tool, and I'm going to put it here in the chat. If you haven't already done this, I'm going to tell you, set up a free account with College A Pro. We call it the MyCAP software. And I'm just going to quickly slide this over. Can you see this, Joe?
Yep, looks good.
All right. So just real quick, after you create the free account and everything, I'm going to go up to the little icon, of the graduate student here and go to my profile information. I said, first thing you should know is what's your affordable college budget. So here's the widget, walks you through to figure out what is your budget. Essentially, what have you pre-saved and what can you afford to cash flow? That'd be the simplest way I'd break it down. Know what your budget is. And frankly, then you'll plug in the different schools. I mean, you plug in your income and assets, and then it'll tell you what your SAI range might be. And I'll be honest, for me, a red flag right off the bat is when I see a federal SAI. In this case, this is a made up case, 28,000, but my budget's 13.5. I'm already at a deficit. Now, what's my potential saving grace is I see the institutional SAI, meaning the schools that use a CSS profile. It might be as low as 15.5. That's a much closer, bridgeable gap between what my budget is. So, but that's one of my very first clues of like, am I in danger or not? Right. And then in the free version, this account I'm showing you is a free version. So I can list 3 schools. So, I picked, whatever 3 schools. So I did a few across the country. So like if I got BU here, and I'm just going to it just jumped to Stanford. I got Boston University, and I'm going to jump to the how to pay page. And I'm not going to go through all that other stuff, but I'm going to show you and say, hey, here's their sticker price, almost 110,000 for my kid. I expect financial aid of about 73,000. My budget was 13.5. I have a funding gap of $22,000 for the freshman year. I can't stop with just the freshman year. I got to know how I'm going to pay for all 4 years, right? So that might be too big of a gap. BU might not be a financial fit school. That might not be an affordable school. It might not make the cut. I might not let my child even see it. If I go to Stanford and I go to how to pay, same flow, and go, well, okay, the gap is maybe about 8,000. Maybe there's a way, we'll look into that. And then you got on the kind of in the middle of the country, UIUC. Yeah, that's just not doable. Like, there's no way I can cover that gap. That's just going to be insane. So the school that had the highest sticker price, Stanford, might be the most affordable one for me. It might be the one that I actually could do. So anyway, that is, without going to, like I said, this isn't going to be a financial aid webinar, but going into what you need to know or how to use the MyCAP tool. This is how you're going to establish your budget and start doing a preliminary, like understanding what your SAI is, and start evaluating those cost-cutting strategies. All right. So let's see. Sophomore year, continue. The students need to maintain that rigor in grades. I'm just the context of how you can do it in your school. That's different for everyone. This is when you start to kind of narrow your extracurricular focus a little bit. A thing I'm very big on is, I don't like the term personal brand. It's, to me, is too markety, but it's kind of the term nowadays. I like to just call it, let's discover your genuine, authentic self and be able to tell that story to college admissions. So the big thing, and I could do a whole 2-hour webinar on this topic, but the worst thing you can ever tell your kid and tell yourselves or tell anybody is say, hey, chase after your passions. All the research out there, all the gurus, the real gurus will tell you that is the worst advice. It's not about chasing your passion. It is about discovering what you're naturally good at and can enjoy doing. Go after that. That's what's going to lead to success. That's what's going to lead to satisfaction. That is what you need to do. And so that's what I work with kids in their sophomore is going to start a variety of assessments and really work and mentor them on discovering their genuine, authentic selves, or as they like to call it nowadays, know your personal brand, right? As far as the financial side, again, update your budget, recalculate your SAI. Someone had a question about like along the lines of like, well, what if I'm paraphrasing, but like, my circumstances might change. This is why we recalculate everything year after year. Make sure, am I on track? If I made adjustments, let's say with assets, is it helping me move in the right direction to lower my SAI? More importantly, is it going to help me qualify for more financial aid to make the school affordable? My, bridging that gap between my budget and the school cost. Junior year, I'm going to start separating this between fall and spring. Junior year, fall, I'm going to say by then, your child, especially for all of you class of 2027, you should be able to ask your child, do you know why you're going to college? If they don't have an answer yet, you're behind. You should be a little concerned. You need to do some soul searching and understand, why am I going to college? Joe mentioned this. Take the SAT or ACT. It doesn't matter which one, whatever one they're going to do better on, right? The schools value them both equally. This is the time, I know Joe and I do this. This is the time we start building up a college list based upon the ones being an academic fit. We did another webinar a while back where we talked about how you narrow schools, 4,000 colleges. Now, how do you narrow it down to like your top 10? You first make the list of which ones are an academic fit. So this is the time to be doing it, fall of junior year. I tell my students, this is when, if you already spent that time discovering your personal brand, this is the time to be pursuing those what we call fit to major extracurricular activities, specifically ones that demonstrate initiative, demonstrate impact. Don't get suckered into the leadership roles. Think of how many colleges we have. I'm sorry, think of how many high schools we have in this country. And then how many clubs are in those high schools? How many leaders do we have? Being a leader means nothing. You got to have a role. You got to be something that demonstrates initiative, demonstrates impact. Okay. Mom and dad, what are we doing on the financial side though this year at this time of year? We're narrowing down that list of schools that you built up based upon an academic fit. You're narrowing those down to be which ones are a financial fit. In other words, you got to know, can I afford it? I just had a consult with one of my kids before I jumped on this webinar, and she's a sophomore. No, I'm sorry, she's a junior, and so she just got her license, and we were talking. I was like, did mom and dad help you with get a car? And she's like, yeah, and she's like, I was like, so did they take you to the Aston Martin dealership or the Ferrari dealership? And she's like, no. I said, oh, so what did they do? And she said, well, they told me this was my budget, and then they said I could shop for a car that fit the budget. I said, that's how you do college. We determine a budget. We find the schools that we first were an academic fit. We then find out, do they fit the budget? And then if we verified that they fit our budget, that they're affordable, guess what? You now get to shop those schools. And so based upon what I call your personal fit. So that's what my juniors right now will be doing in the spring, is they're going to take that list of schools that we already pre-vetted were an academic fit. Mom and dad have reviewed and said, okay, we know which ones we can afford and which ones we can't. The ones they can't afford are off the list. The child then shops the schools that that meet those two must-have criteria, academic and financial fit. The kids narrowing it down to I say top 10 based upon their personal fit criteria. This spring is when I tell my juniors to take that SAT or an ACT a second time. I just tell every child, expect to take it twice. We tend to do our best. Statistically, I find we tend to do our best the second time. For what, unless you got a perfect score, then, okay, great. But short of that, plan on taking it twice. Just mentally prepare to take it twice. Also, spring for juniors, March, first week of March, typically, Joe, isn't it? First week of March is when Common App will let us know what the prompts are for the personal statement.
And they really haven't changed the last,
The last couple of
few,
years, they haven't.
few
No,
cycles. They're always, yeah, they're always kind of like maybe, but
right.
yeah, and there always is a topic of your choice. But yeah, March is when they make the official announcement.
Yeah, right. So that's when I have my students start drafting personal statements. And frankly, I want them to be done with them in summer. Um, I'm aggressive with my timelines. I have my students showing initiative. I'm not going all the other strategies and such, for me, it is they're going to finish those personal statements in the summertime. And, a lot of students are like, oh, I'll do it in this, my senior year. Your senior year is way busier than your junior year. The teachers don't give you any slack your senior year. You're going to be more busy with your classes, and you got to somehow find time to do the college applications, which are being pushed after your whatever extracurricular activities you're involved in. So get it done in the
Yeah,
summer.
and as parents, they may actually say two words that you haven't heard in years from them if you push them to get it done in the summer when their friends are now stressing and doing it in the fall with everything else going on. They may say, "Thank you."
100%.
Yeah.
Most of my students, not all, if from what you heard earlier in our webinar, but most of my students had their applications. I had some of my students had their applications in. Well, I'm just jumping the gun a little bit. So think about this: college applications open up for most schools August 1. And then at that point, if the college has supplemental essays, they'll be announced on, when they officially go live on the Common App. And frankly, that's when, you spend basically all of August addressing all those supplemental essays. I had a significant number of my kids done and had their applications in September, and they had their acceptances in October or November in some cases, and their classmates haven't even finished their applications yet. Like my kids are like, oh, this is so great. I met with one of my kids earlier today. She got accepted to her dream school. She's like, I'm done. I'm not submitting any more apps. And she's just dancing a happy, an Irish jig right now. She's great. So push harder and sooner than their classmates are, is my advice. And basically, as we talked earlier, apply whatever the early. I'm not a big fan of early decision. But I do like early action. So whatever that early action deadline is, aim for 2 weeks prior to it. Not doing it the midnight of, but that's I always say get it in 2 weeks prior. And then for parents, financial aid applications are going to go live basically October 1. And you should be filling out, everyone's going to need to do a FAFSA. Depending on the schools, maybe you do a CSS profile. Aim to be done with those, I'd say generally mid-November, and you should be fine. And then senior year, spring, if the student's done with their college applications, that's why I tell them that you're spending the spring applying for private scholarships. We want as much free money to help bring down the cost of college, right? And when you get your acceptances, and they tend to kind of have their order of like what's their favorite, what's their second, what's their third, et cetera, et cetera. I always say before you commit, make sure you visit like those top 3 schools in person. I can't tell you how many times if a student commits to a school because they just never visited, but they just knew that this is the school for me from what they read and the social media, all the marketing that school put out, but they never visited. And then they show up to campus in the fall. Within a month, the majority of them are coming back saying, I don't like it here. I want to transfer. And I'm like, did you visit the campus? And they're like, no. I'm like, this is why I say visit the campus. Don't commit to a school until you've been there and experienced it. It doesn't matter how much research you do. It's I can't describe it other than you just got to know you vibe with it, and you don't know if you're going to vibe with it unless you experience it. So visit the campus. And then parents, again, financially, you can't think about just how you're going to pay freshman year. You need to think about sophomore, junior, and seniors. You need to have a 4-year plan. You got to make sure, it fit your budget, and you need to know the mechanics, like how are we actually going to pay this year, but also sophomore, junior, and senior years. And I'll say it this way, and it's just the a terribly hard conversation you would have with your child is, let's say they get it, it's the springtime, they got all their acceptances, they get their financial aid offer letters, and they're like, this is the school I want to go to. It would be an incredibly difficult conversation at the time to say, that's wonderful, honey, but we can't afford it. That I will acknowledge is going to be a hard conversation. And most parents for the 25 years, parents have ignored that conversation and just said, we'll figure it out somehow. No parent has ever figured it out. Look at me. You will not figure it out magically. What you will do is go in way too much debt. That is what the solution has been for my 25 years. And it's been, frankly, that solution for the last 45 years, that when higher education started getting outrageously more expensive. That is a hard conversation to have, but you must have it. Because if you don't, I can tell you what the future is going to look like. It's either sometime in their sophomore or junior year, some point when they've been there and they now really do love that school, you're going to run out of money and someone's not going to lend you the money. And then they have to drop out. That would be the worst conversation to ever have. You have to avoid that scenario at all costs. So if that means having the hard conversation while they're a senior in high school, have the hard conversation. Now, if you did all the planning, and especially if you have a consultant guiding you through this, that shouldn't happen. But you need to plan ahead. I can't stress it enough. All right. I feel like I'm a Debbie Downer. Let's
happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays. So anyway, there is, I will say, there's always a solution. I would say that, I'm going to stop the screen. I'm just going to say this is, if we know the end goal, like if the child knows why they're going to college, if they know what's important, they know the trajectory they're on. And again, you have to remember, college is not the end goal. It is just the first step of many steps. There is always a way to sit and get them on the right path. Now, it might not be the college that they thought, but there is always a way. And so I want to stress that too. Like, I have been able to find colleges for every parent's budget that would fit and offer the degree that, it's just a matter of, does the student want to go there or not? But there's always a solution. It's just a matter of finding it and knowing how to work the system. And the other thing last thing I'll probably say is, you just got to remember, speaking of someone who worked in higher education, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, I forget now. Yeah. Was it the Times? Yeah. That talked about how a great analogy is that, the strategies and the processes you're going through in high school, it's kind of like you think you're playing checkers. What you don't realize is that colleges are playing chess. It's the same board, so it looks the same, but it's a different game. And it's and they're playing another level of strategy that you just don't know what's happening. And so that's where it really is beneficial to have a consultant who also knows how to play chess, frankly, who played it for many, better than them. So anyway, that's, I would say, is that, again, there's always hope. There's always a way. But anyway, Joe, what'd you put in the chat there?
I put in, since we're at about time now, went ahead and put in the meeting link if you want to chat through that, and then I'll put in the landing page where they can find out more information and get the recording as well tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll just, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you guys are the type who just say, hey, we're interested, tell us more. What do you guys do? Or we think we have a complex situation, or man, we just want to make sure we don't overpay for college. We want to make sure we're setting our child up for success. Book a consult, you know, quick, 15 minutes, and
Yep.
we'll tell you, if you're on the right track, or if we see areas where there's going to be significant improvement or strategy, we'll tell you. But yeah, I would encourage just schedule a quick 15-minute call if you're just even remotely curious of like, hey, where are we on this process? Anything else? That's some questions are I see in the Q&A are pretty specific that would require probably like an hour one-on-one type consults.
Yeah, and I would just say that the consults here that we just put in those links, free and really worth your time. I think especially for parents of juniors and sophomores, you're in it. You want to do the right planning now. You know, if it's next year and you're a parent of a senior and you're sort of like trying to figure it out, that's not good. So let's get it figured out now. And there's zero commitment. After the consult, you'll get some advice from us and a plan moving forward, and you can choose from there. But you also do have the opportunity of using our platform that has a lot of amazing information in there as well. The MyCAP that we shared earlier. So that's all for me.
I'm just responding to one more. Uh, yeah, no, it's great. So obviously, thanks for hanging out. Happy holidays to everyone, and if you keep coming to any other webinars, and hopefully you'll keep learning and getting actionable advice and hear what's true and not what's on the various little social media channels that can really steer you wrong. So anyway, definitely if you don't have a free account with MyCap, I would tell you that start there. You'll be kept in the loop about any of the other webinars. And if you saw in the news, for anybody who uses Niche has partnered with College A Pro and is using our software as well. So when you're starting to look at any of the school costs, you're seeing us and our software behind the scenes. So it's that important. The whole financial aspect to the college planning it's that important. So anyway, that's my final 2 cents. All right. I think that's it. All right. Thank you guys. Happy holidays.
Great night, everyone.